In this video, we will cover adjusting view settings and applying and assigning view templates. In this floor plan view, you can see different colors, varying line weights, and even different brightness levels. We'll take a look at how this is controlled. When nothing is selected, the Properties palette displays the parameters of the view, or the view settings. You should be aware that a lot of these settings are also available in the View control bar. For example, you can see the view scale in the Properties palette as well as in the View control bar. You'll also notice that in the Properties palette there are some parameters that are grayed out. For example, the detail level is unavailable. And if I go to the View control bar, it's also grayed out here as well. When you see a view setting grayed out, that should indicate that a view template has been assigned and is controlling that parameter. So you may be wondering, why can I not adjust the detail level, but I can adjust the scale? And that's because the view template that is assigned, and we'll take a look at that. So when I scroll down to the view template parameter, you can see electrical plan is being used. When you see a view template in this field, that means that it has been assigned to the view. So when I click in the view template field, it opens the assign view template dialog. And you can see that electrical plan is selected. And when I take a look at the view properties, you can see that some are included and some are not. This is controlled with this checkbox in the include column. And so you can see that view scale is deselected, whereas detail level is selected. And as I scroll through the list, you can see the other ones that are selected. So when a parameter is selected, in this case detail level, that means that the view template will control or drive that parameter for the view. And so that's how you can maintain consistency in your views, is by using view templates. But in some cases you may not want to include all of the parameters. The other way to use a view template is to apply it. So if I click OK to close this dialog, I can then switch to the View ribbon, and in the Graphics panel I'll expand View Templates, and you can see that there's this tool called Apply Template Properties to Current View. So if I were to simply apply the electrical plan view template, it would be a one-time application of those view parameters, and then I could adjust them as needed. So if I applied it, you would not see electrical plan listed as the view template, and none of these parameters would be grayed out. And so that's the difference between assigning and applying a view template. Continuing on here in our list of view settings, there's the visibility graphic overrides, which are important, and we will touch on that in a minute. The discipline is also important, and is currently set to electrical and being driven by the view template, but any of the MEP disciplines will have the architectural components half-tone by default. And so that's why in this view you can see the electrical components are bright and full brightness, whereas the architectural components are half-tone. Another thing that's very important is the view range. And when I scroll down to the Extents section, I can see View Range, and I'll click Edit to open up the View Range dialog, and then I'll click Show. And you can see a graphic here which can help you understand what these settings do. And like I said, it's very important so that you are seeing just the extents of the view that you want to. And so remember, we're working with a 3D model here. And so in a floor plan view, we just want to see a certain slice of the building model, if you will. And so the view range will control the top and bottom extents of the view. And so if you have underground conduit, then you're going to want to adjust the view depth in the bottom so that you can see below the floor. If the top, you want to make sure that you're extended up enough so that you can see the lights and anything above the ceiling. Or maybe you don't want to see that, and so you could adjust the top to control that. And then the cut plane, that's important to mainly with the architectural components, and so you want to cut through doors and windows so that they are visible and appear like you're used to seeing them in the view. Or if you don't want to see them, you can adjust that above it, and it'll change how that displays. I'll click OK to close the View Range dialog, and then we'll take a look at visibility and graphic overrides. So I'll click Edit next to Visibility Graphic Overrides, and that's going to open up this dialog. And the important thing to note here is that these controls are specific to the view. So that's why it says floor plan and then the specific floor plan view that we are viewing. The first thing that you can do is control the visibility of categories. So you can see that there are several categories that are deselected here or unchecked in the visibility column. That means that they will not be visible. And so we have several architectural components turned off, mechanical components are turned off, but our lighting fixtures, lighting devices, those are all on so that we can see them in this view. You can also adjust the graphic display of those components by adjusting projection lines and cut lines, and you can even set categories to half tone or override the detail level of specific model categories. Similarly, on the Annotation Categories tab, you can control the visibility and some graphic display settings for annotation categories such as text and tags. Analytical model categories are more for structural analytical components. If you have anything imported, you can control those on the Imported Categories tab. And then on the Filters tab, you can create filters that will override certain graphic settings, and then also the visibility of certain components. And so in this case, we have an electrical check filter, and we'll click Edit and take a look at what that's doing. So first off, it's applied to electrical fixtures, lighting devices, and lighting fixtures. And what it is looking for is the circuit number and that it contains a dash. And so in this case, that's the naming convention that's used, and so it's looking for those fixtures that are assigned to a circuit and have the correct naming convention. And then in this case, it is visible, and then what's happening to those components is that the line color is being overridden with green, so that you can tell which of those which of those components are assigned to the circuits properly. But you could create filters and turn off the visibility or apply other graphic settings to those. Lastly, on the Revit Links tab, you can control the visibility of Revit links. You can also set them to halftone or set it to an underlay if you wish. And then there are also specific visibility and graphic controls for the links. And so an example would be if the architectural model has lighting fixtures and you do not want to see them, well, you don't want to turn it off on the Model Categories tab because that would then turn it off for everything in that view. And so what you could do is come in here to the RVT Link Display Settings dialog, set it to Custom, and then on the Model Categories tab, set it to Custom, and then you could control the lighting fixtures for the model, for the linked model, separately from in your host model. So there's obviously a lot here, but that is how you can control the visibility and graphics settings for your view, and then also standardize those with view templates. In this video, we will cover editing panel schedule templates and applying panel schedule templates. In this project, there are 3 panel schedules. Panel schedules are based on templates, and the panel schedule template controls the formatting and the information that appears in the panel schedule. To manage panel schedule templates, switch to the Manage ribbon. And then in the Settings panel, expand Panel Schedule Templates and click Manage Templates. In this dialog, there are two tabs, Manage Templates and Apply Templates. We'll begin on the Manage Templates tab. To begin, you can select a template type, which can be Branch Panel, Data Panel, or Switchboard. With Branch Panel selected, you can then choose one of the panel configurations. You can create panel schedule templates for each template type, and for the branch panels, you can create templates for each panel configuration. I'll select two columns, circuits across. With the template selected, you can click Edit, and Revit goes into Modify Panel Schedule Template mode. There are several controls on the contextual ribbon to help you edit and customize your panel schedule template. To begin, click Set Template Options. In this dialog, there are three sets of options: General Settings, Circuit Table, and Loads Summary. In the General Settings, you can control the total width of the panel schedule. You can also control the number of slots shown. This can be set to variable based on max number of single pole breakers, or it can be fixed to a constant value, and then you can set the value. Under Parts, you can choose whether or not to show a header, the load summary area, or a footer. Then under Borders, you can choose whether or not to show the outside border of the template and the border between parts, and then you can control the line style that is used for these borders. Next, switch to the Circuit Table options. Here, you can control the column header text orientation, and then you can choose how to display loads. There are several options here, and when you select an option, a preview will appear in the image on the right. This can help you understand what each setting does. Under that, you can choose whether or not to show the circuit number on one row for multi-phase circuits. And then, for panels other than three-phase, you can choose to hide the column for unused phases, or to show but disable column for unused phases. I'll leave it set to hide it, and then for show phase column values, you can choose either load or current. I'll leave it set to load. Lastly, in the load summary options, you can control the column header text orientation, and then you can choose to show in panel schedule either only loads that are connected to a panel or a constant set of load classifications. When you set a constant set of load classes, you can then choose the load classes and add them to the list of scheduled loads. I'll leave it set to only loads that are connected to a panel, and then I'll click OK. Next, you can control the information in the header, in the circuit table, and also in the load summary area. To begin, realize that you can either add text or parameters. When you see a value that is inside of angled brackets, that is a parameter. For example, panel name, location, mounting, enclosure, all of these are parameters. They're inside angle brackets. The values that are not, they're simply text. So you can enter in whatever information you want to customize that. So in this cell we have text, and then in the cell next to it we have a parameter. The parameter can be controlled in the contextual ribbon. You can choose the category, and in the header area you can choose to add information from the electrical equipment category or from project information. Once you select a category, you can then expand the drop down underneath and select a parameter to add. Once you get to the circuit table area, you can do the same thing. You can add text or you can add parameters, but you can only add parameters from the electrical circuits category. There are also several other options available. You can add columns. For example, I will select in the poles column, and then in the columns and rows panel, you can see that there's an insert column button. And you can choose to add a column left of selected or right of selected. I'll click right of selected and a new column is added. You can also adjust the column widths. Notice that when I adjust one of the column widths on the left, the associated column on the right also updates. Next, I will click in the column header field, and you can add text, and then if I click in a data field, I can then add a parameter. So with electrical circuits selected, I'll expand add parameter, and then I can choose one of the parameters to add. For example, if I select connection type, that parameter is added into all of the data fields in that column on both the left and the right, and also the column header is filled in. I'll expand this a bit to make that connection type fit in there. You can also click Edit Font. So when you're in a cell, you can click Edit Font, and then you can control the font size, and then choose whether or not to make it bold or italicized or underlined. So I'll make this one bold and click OK. And I will do the same thing for the cell on the right. Make it bold, and I'll click OK. And then once again, there are several other options here, and I'll select all these. I'll press. Notice that if I press Control, I can only. Control will not allow me to select multiple data cells, but I can click and drag and select multiple ones, and then I can click Edit Borders, and I can control the borders that are going to be available. So I can select inside and click OK, and then we'll do the same thing here. I'll click Edit Borders, inside and outside this time, so you can see how it's affecting it here. So I need to select both inside and outside. And I will adjust the bottom portion as well. We will edit the border there and just add outside to fix all the formatting here. And we may not be perfect, but as you can see, there are several options there to control the font and shading and borders and so on and so forth. Lastly, in the load summary area, you can also add text and parameters. You can only add parameters from the electrical equipment category, though. Okay, so as you can see, there are several options here. Once you're finished, click Finish Template. And then, now that we have updated the template, we need to update the panel schedules that are based on that template. And so we can expand Panel Schedule Templates again and click Manage Templates. This time on the Apply Templates tab, we can see that the 3 panel schedules are out of date. Or not that they're out of date, but that the panel schedule that they're based on is out of date. And so we can use Control or Shift to select those, and then click Update Schedules, and it will use the branch panel template that we just updated. If you've entered text into a panel schedule that's not in the template, then it could be lost, and that's what the message says appearing here. So if that's what you want to do, click Yes. So once again, you can have multiple panel schedules for the different template types and different panel configurations. And then if you had multiple templates, you could select it from the Apply Templates drop-down and then apply that template to your panel schedules. So I'll click OK, and then we'll open up a panel schedule, and we can see the panel schedule with the connection type that we just added. Now there's a couple borders here that we're missing, but as you've seen, we can go back, fix that, apply it again, and fix that this little line that's missing there. In this video, we will cover creating schedules and filtering, sorting, and grouping schedule information. Schedules are a great way to report the information in your building model. To create a schedule, you can find the Schedules Quantities branch in the project browser, right-click that branch, and choose New Schedule Quantities. This opens the New Schedule dialog. To begin, you can select the category of elements that you want to create a schedule for. If you want to create a schedule containing multiple categories, select Multi-Category. For this example, we'll create a lighting fixture schedule. Select Lighting Fixtures, and then you can see the name automatically fills in to Lighting Fixture Schedule, but you can adjust the name as needed. Next, you can choose to schedule building components or schedule keys. Typically, you'll schedule building components, but in some instances you may need to schedule keys. These are great for space schedules. You can also choose the phase. For this example, we'll select New Construction, but if you had a phased project, you could schedule existing lighting fixtures, or if there were multiple phases of construction, you could choose one of those phases. In this case, we'll select New Construction and then click OK, and this opens the Schedule Properties dialog. The first thing you do when creating a schedule is add fields to the list of scheduled fields. And these are parameters. So in this case, we're selecting lighting fixture parameters. You could also expand the Select Available Fields From and choose Room, Space, or Project Information if you wanted to add parameters from one of those. With lighting fixtures selected, I'll begin adding parameters. I'll add the type mark, and you can click the Add Parameters button, or you can simply double-click the field. I'll add family and type, and then add voltage and number of poles. Just a quick note here as I'm adding these, if you were to see duplicate parameters in this list, it's probably because there are multiple shared parameters that are created with the same name. And so shared parameters can have the same name, and they're recognized by Revit by the GUID number, and so that's why you may have multiple parameters. Okay, once you have the scheduled fields list with all the parameters you want, you can go ahead and click OK and create the schedule. I'll touch on a few more things here first. You could select Include Elements and Links if you wanted to. Let's say you had a linked model with other lighting fixtures, you could include those by selecting this option. You could also add a calculated parameter. If you wanted to create a custom calculated value, you could do that here. And then you can also combine parameters. For example, if you wanted to add the voltage and number of poles in the same field, you could do that with a combined parameter. You can also control the order of the list if you need to, if they were not in the correct order. But I'll click OK and we'll go ahead and create the schedule. And you'll notice right off the bat we are scheduling every single light fixture. If you do not want to schedule every single one and you just want to do it by type, there's a way you can do that, and you'll need to go to the Sorting Grouping tab of the Schedule Properties dialog and deselect Itemize Every Instance, and then you can control how the schedule is sorted. So in this case, if we want to sort by just the type mark, I can choose Type Mark and then click OK. And now this schedule is sorted by the type mark values. And so you can see here that these have type marks, and then there's one that does not, and these are all the lighting fixtures that do not contain a type mark. You could continue to sort it by other parameters if you wanted to, and there are 4 options here. So 4 options to control your sorting. If you wanted to filter them, so let's say you wanted to filter out all the ones that do not contain a type mark, you could select type mark, and then you could choose has a value. And there are several ways to filter schedules. You could filter it by, say, if you wanted just the voltage to equal a certain value, you could do that. If you just wanted to schedule 120 volt lighting fixtures. In this case, we'll just do type mark has a value, and I'll click OK. And now all the lighting fixtures that do not have a type mark are removed from the schedule. So the filtering and sorting and grouping tabs of the Schedule Properties dialog provide you a lot of flexibility, and you can also do things like calculate totals if you wanted to do that. And so in this case, we don't have any parameters that we're calculating totals, but we could just get a total count. There are also formatting options. You can set a field to be horizontal or vertical, and then you can choose the horizontal alignment to help customize the formatting of your schedule. And then on the Appearance tab, you can customize the appearance and control the line styles of the grid lines or the outline. And then you can even choose whether or not to show title or show headers. Last thing I'll say about schedules, if you update information in a schedule, it will also update it for the model elements. So for example, if you update the manufacturer, that will update the manufacturer parameter for all of those light fixtures. So schedules are a great way to not only report information from your building model, but also control the information in your building model. In this video, we will cover using section boxes and scope boxes, applying color schemes, and creating plan regions. Let's begin by looking at section boxes. 3D views have section boxes. I'll open the 3D electrical view, and then in the Properties palette, I'll scroll down to the Extents section. Here you can see a section box parameter. When enabled, a 3D box will be created around the model and can be used to clip the model. When I enable section box, we can see that nothing really happens, and the reason is because the visibility of the section box category is turned off. And this is typical for a lot of project templates, especially the out-of-the-box Revit templates. I'll type VV to open the Visibility Graphic Overrides dialog, switch to the Annotation Categories tab, and then scroll down to Section Boxes. When I turn the category on and click OK, you can then see the section box surrounding the model. I'll select it, and then you can see controls on each edge of the section box. You can use these controls to move that edge of the section box. And when you do, you can clip certain portions of the model. And so this is a great way to take a look inside your model so you can get a better idea of certain areas of the building. When you are in a 3D view and you select elements or certain components, there is a tool called Selection Box, and this is in the contextual ribbon in the View panel. When you click Selection Box, the section box extents would be adjusted so that it surrounds the components that you selected. And so this is a great way to really narrow down that section box to a specific area. And so in this case, I'm looking at an electrical room. Now, this view just has the electrical components, but if you want to take a look at another view where other components are visible, such as the architectural model, you can open up that 3D view. Or if you are in a floor plan view and you select components, and then you click Selection Box, it will open the default 3D view. And so in this case, I have other components turned on here in the 3D view. and you can see that they are visible. Once again, the section box is turned off in this default 3D view, but if I turn it on, I can then select it and we can make adjustments if I wanted to see, if I wanted to kind of expand that a bit to take a closer look. And so in this case, I'm now seeing some ductwork, and I can coordinate around those components. And if I needed to, I could turn on the architectural model if we wanted to coordinate against the architectural model as well. So just to summarize, there is a section box parameter which will enable the section box in a 3D view, and then the selection box tool can be used to control the section box so that it adjusts the extents to just be around certain selected components in the model. Now let's take a look at scope boxes. I will go back to the floor plan view and then switch to the view ribbon, and in the create panel you can see there is a scope box tool. So there are a couple different uses for scope boxes, and typically on the MEP side they are used to create areas of the building. So if you have a large building that will not fit on a sheet at the desired scale, you can break it down into smaller areas, and you can use scope boxes to indicate those areas. So if I activate the scope box tool, I can then click 2 points to create a rectangle and create a scope box. And for example, I will name this one Area A, and then I'll create another one, and we'll call it Area B. And we'll create one more and call it Area C. Now if I switch back to the default 3D view and I disable section box and I zoom to extents, you can now see scope boxes. And when I select a scope box, it has the same controls on each edge, and I can use it to adjust the extents, whether it's the, for a floor plan, or I can adjust the height as well. And you can see that the scope boxes are not clipping the model, and so they have different functionality. And so let's take a look at that. So if I switch back to the floor plan view, in the project browser I'm going to right click and select duplicate view, duplicate as a dependent, and we'll create a dependent view. And I'm going to rename it Area A just for this example. And when I scroll down in the properties palette, I can see that there is a scope box parameter for this floor plan view. And if I assign it the scope box Area A, then the crop region will adjust to match the scope box. And so once again, that's a great way to create smaller areas, and then you can use those scope boxes to control the crop regions so that you can have consistency in your model. The other thing that scope boxes can do is they can drive datum elements. They can control the extents of datum elements. So for example, if I switch to an elevation view and I select a level, you can see that it also has a scope box parameter. Now in this case, my scope boxes are for smaller areas of the building. You may want to create an overall scope box that you can use to control your levels and grids if you create grids in your MEP model. Okay, last thing on scope boxes, if I switch back to the default 3D view and select a scope box, you can see that there is a Views Visible parameter. And when I click Edit, it opens the Scope Box Views Visible dialog, and you can use this dialog to control the views where the scope box is visible in. And not just the scope box, but also the datum elements that are associated to that scope box. And so this is where you can control the floor plan views, 3D views, and even elevation views for your scope boxes and associated datum elements. Next, let's take a look at color schemes. And I will switch back to the floor plan view, And then on the Analyze ribbon in the Color Fill panel, I can click Color Fill Legend, and then I can click to place a legend. And I can apply a color fill legend to zones, rooms, or spaces. So if I select spaces, and then I just have one scheme in this model, so we'll click OK. And when I do, you can then see in the Properties palette that the color scheme is Schema 1. And when I click that button to open the Edit Color Scheme dialog, I can see that this color scheme is applied to spaces, and the colors are based off of the name parameter. So if I wanted to, we could switch that to average estimated illumination, and then we could apply a color scheme based off of the average estimated illumination parameter. And so you can see several colors here. I can also do that instead of by value, I can change it to by range, and then we can look at a range of the average estimated illumination parameter. And these can be modified as needed. So in this case, I just have 2. So if it's less than 20-foot candles or more than 20-foot candles, and I can visually see where those spaces are at. Last thing is a plan region. And so if you have a certain room, such as a lobby, that the view range is going to be different, you can use a plan region. So if you switch to the View ribbon, and then in the Create panel, expand Plan Views, and select Plan Region, you can use the tools in the Draw Gallery to sketch a plan region. And then once you have a plan region, you can control the view range for that plan region independent of the overall view range for the view. In this video, we will cover creating sheets with the correct title block, creating revisions, and adding revision information to sheets. In this project, we'll create a sheet for the ground floor electrical plan view, and then we'll add the view to the sheet. To create a sheet, scroll down to the Sheets branch in the project browser, and then right-click the branch and select New Sheet. This opens the New Sheet dialog, and you can select the title block you want to use for the sheet. I'll select E1 30 by 42 and then click OK. When Revit creates the sheet, you can see that it automatically numbers the sheet. But you can expand the Sheets branch in the project browser, right-click a sheet and select Rename. I'll number this sheet E101, and then I'll name it I'll name it Ground Floor Electrical. And then click OK. Be aware that in the title block family, you can add parameters, such as the sheet name and the sheet number. And then you can select the title block and click a parameter in order to activate it if you want to adjust that parameter right on the sheet in the drawing area. To add a sheet to a view, you can select it in the project browser and then drag and drop it onto the sheet. When I do, you can then see the viewport attached to the cursor. And you can click to place the viewport on the sheet. Afterwards, you can select the viewport and move it as needed. Also, with the viewport selected, be aware that there are dot controls on the view title line, and you can adjust the length of the line as needed. If you want to move the view title, you need to deselect the viewport and then select the view title, and then you can drag it to move it as needed. I'll select the viewport again and then click Edit Type. You can have multiple types of viewports, and as you can see, the parameters here are title, show extension line, and then line weight, color, and line pattern. So at a minimum, you may want to have at least 2 viewport types, one where you show the title and one where you don't show the title. And this is useful for details and legends and so on and so forth. And then you can adjust the view title family that's used. You can create one of those and then load it into the project, and you could select it here. I'll click OK to close the Type Properties dialog, and then we will take a look at revision information. In a title block family, you can create a revision schedule and then add it to the title block family, and it'll appear on your sheets. Now, to populate that, you can add revisions or sheet issue information. And to do that, switch to the View ribbon, and then in the Sheet Composition panel, click Revisions. And this opens the Sheet Issues Revisions dialog. To begin, there is a default revision or sheet issue, and you can control the revision number. And first off, you can set the numbering method to either numeric or alphanumeric, or even none if you don't want any numbering method. And then you can control the numbering options. When you click numeric, it'll open the Customize Numbering Options dialog, and there are two tabs, numeric and alphanumeric. For numeric, you can control the starting number, and then you can add a prefix or a suffix if you wish. For alphanumeric, you can control the characters that are used in the sequence, and you can separate them by a comma. And then once again, you can add a prefix or a suffix. I'll click OK to close this dialog, and then you can control the date, the revision description, and then after it's issued, you can select Issued, but notice that when you do, everything becomes unavailable. It's dimmed and you cannot adjust those fields. And so we'll deselect Issued until we actually issue it. Then you can control who it's issued to and who it's issued by. And then in the Show column, you can choose whether you want to show the cloud and the tag for that revision, or just the tag, or nothing at all. To add additional revisions, click Add in this dialog, and it'll add additional revisions. And then you can control the numbering method, and this can be per project or per sheet. Per project will number the revisions based on the, as you see right here in this dialog, the revision number and the order that they are in this list. Per sheet will change it to number it based on the revisions that are actually on the sheet. When you select that, you'll get a dialog telling you that it's going to change, and you can choose whether or not you actually want to do that. I'll click No for this example, and we'll leave it set to per project. You can also select individual rows, and you can move revisions up or down. And you can also merge revisions. You can merge it with the revision above or below it. Or you can simply delete a revision altogether if you want to remove those clouds and tags. For example, I'll select two revisions in the list, and I'll click Delete, and as you can see, it says that these will be removed along with all associated clouds and tags. Once a revision has been issued, it cannot be deleted or merged with another revision. I'll deselect Issued, and we will leave these two revisions in the project, and I'll click OK. And then I can create a revision cloud and assign it to one of those revisions. Or if I don't have a revision that I'm adding to a view that's placed on a sheet, I can still add that revision information to the title block. And to do that, with the Properties palette showing the parameters for the sheet, scroll down to Revisions on Sheet and click Edit. And this opens the Revisions on Sheet dialog, and you can choose whether or not to show each revision. So I'll select Shown in Revision Schedule for each of these and click OK. And then that revision information is populated in the revision schedule in the title block. In this video, we will cover creating views of various types and adjusting view properties. When you are modeling or documenting a building project, there are several types of views you can create to help you. When you switch to the View ribbon, you can see on the Create panel that there are several view tools that you can use. You can create 3D views, section views, callouts, several different types of plan views, elevation views, drafting views, and so on. We'll take a look at some of these tools. To begin, I'll click Section. To create a section view, you can click 2 points to place the section head and then the section tail. You can then adjust the far clip. With the section view selected, you can right-click and select Go to View to open the section view. You can then adjust the crop region and use any of the tools in the View control bar or in the Properties palette, similar to how you would in a floor plan view. For example, you can adjust the scale, the detail level, the visual style. You can even use tools such as Temporary Hide Isolate, Reveal Hidden Elements, and Temporary View Properties. Once again, just like you would in a floor plan view. I'll switch back to the ground floor electrical plan view, and then in the Create panel, I'll expand the Callout Split button, and you can see that you can create a rectangular callout or you can sketch a callout. I'll click Rectangle, and then I'll click 2 points to place the opposite corners of a callout view. With sections and callouts, you can see the blue section heads, and you can double-click anything that's blue and that view will open. I'll switch back to the ground floor electrical plan view. Back on the View ribbon, when you expand the Plan Views tool, you can see that there are several different kinds of plan views that you can create. Floor plan views will look from the top down, whereas reflected ceiling plan views will look from the floor up. So you're looking up to the ceiling. That way you can see the reflected ceiling plan grid. For MEP, you may also create plan regions in special circumstances. Plan regions are used when you want to have an area that has a separate view range. You can also create elevation views if needed, and then Drafting View is the next tool. When you click Drafting View, the new Drafting View dialog will open. You can enter in a name and set the scale for the drafting view. I'll leave it set to the default values and then click OK. Drafting views are special types of views that are separate from the building model. In other words, if you switch to the Systems ribbon, you can see that none of these tools are available because you cannot create model elements in drafting views. You can use almost any of the tools on the Annotate ribbon to create detail lines or filled regions or add detail components. And so as you can see, drafting views are used to create details or even one-line diagrams. There's an existing one-line diagram in this project, and it was created in a drafting view. I'll switch back to the ground floor electrical plan view again, and then switch to the View ribbon. When you activate the Section or Callout tool, you can also select Reference Other View, and then you can reference a drafting view or even another section view that has been created. I'll click Modify to end the command, and then continuing on, there are legends. You can create a legend, so if you have different symbols for various electrical fixtures or lighting fixtures, you can create a legend in order to explain what those symbols are, and then place those legends on a sheet. There are also tools to duplicate views. You can simply duplicate a view. You can duplicate a view with detailing, which will also add the view-specific elements from the view, such as tags. And then you can duplicate views as a dependent view. Duplicating as a dependent is great when a building has several areas that will not fit on a sheet at the scale, the desired scale, and so you can create dependent views and then have each dependent be referencing a specific area. You can also right-click a view in the project browser and access the duplicate view options. I'll select duplicate as a dependent, and then we'll create a dependent view of our floor plan view. And when I do, you can see that there is a branch created for the floor plan view in the project browser. At this point, if you adjust any of the view settings, such as the scale and the detail level, it will also adjust for the parent view and vice versa. In this case, we have a view template assigned, and so some of those controls are unavailable. But this is a great place to use temporary view properties if you just want to quickly turn on the visibility of a certain category or make some adjustments, but they're not going to be used to place it on a sheet. You can click temporary view properties and then enable temporary view properties. And then when I do that, you can see that the scale and detail level can be adjusted as needed. I will restore the view properties. And lastly, we'll talk about view properties. And if I switch back to the parent floor plan view, I'll click Edit Type to open up the Type Properties dialog. And here you can see that there are type properties for the floor plan view type. You can adjust the callout tag, the reference label, and you can also control the view template that is applied to new views. And not only that, you can then choose whether or not the new views are dependent on the template. When this option is selected, then the view template will be assigned to the new views, just like we saw in the properties palette. There is a view template assigned. When this option is deselected in the type properties dialog, then this view template will just be applied to the new view, and then you can adjust the view properties as needed, or any of the view settings such as the scale and the detail level. I'll leave this selected and then click OK. And then I will open the section view. So any sections, callouts, they also have type properties. So I'll click Edit Type, and for sections and callouts, you can adjust the callout tag and the section tag. And when I click in the section tag field and then click the More button, you can see another type properties dialog opens for the section tag. Here you can adjust the section head and the section tail, and you can select any of the families that have been loaded into the project. And so that will help you customize your section and callout tags. So just to summarize, there are several view types that you can use, and there are several ways you can customize these views so that they fit the needs of your project. In this video, we will cover adjusting the phase status of elements and using phase filters. Phases allow Revit to be aware of time. You can create multiple phases to represent the multiple phases of construction that you may have in your building project. There are multiple workflows that can be used with phases. We'll discuss how the functionality works. To begin, scroll down in the Properties palette to the phasing parameters of the view. Views have a phase filter parameter and a phase parameter. Next, select one of the cable trays, and then scroll down to the phasing parameters. Model elements have a phase created and a phase demolished parameter. The combination of the options between these two parameters will allow the elements to be in one of 4 phase status conditions. Those are existing, new construction, temporary, and demolished. We'll take a look at how this works. I'll deselect the cable tray, and then on the Manage ribbon, in the Phasing panel, click Phases. This opens the Phasing dialog. On the Project Phases tab, you can create additional phases. For this example, we'll leave it set to existing and new construction. On the Phase Filters tab, you can see the phase filters that have been created in the project. These are also the options that will be available for the phase filter parameter for views. They control which phase statuses appear in the view and how they will appear. When one of the options is set to overridden, then the controls on the Graphic Overrides tab will be used. I'll click OK to close the dialog. Now we'll take a look at adjusting the phase status of model elements. I'll select the first run of cable tray, and then in the Properties palette, you can see that the phase created is set to New Construction and the phase demolished is None. So this run of cable tray is new. I'll select the run next to it, and then we'll change the phase created to Existing and leave the phase demolished set to None. This will change this run of cable tray to Existing. And as you can see, the graphic display of those elements have changed. In the New Construction phase, which is the phase of the view, those elements are now existing. I'll select the next run, and then we'll leave the phase created set to New Construction, and we'll change the phase demolished to New Construction. When I do, you can see that an error appears stating that the elements need to be disconnected. I'll click Disconnect. The reason is because these elements are now temporary elements. They are created in the New Construction phase and also demolished in the New Construction phase. And when elements are demolished, especially cable tray and conduit elements, they cannot remain connected to other elements. And so that's a big thing when we're dealing with MEP elements. I'll select the next run, and we'll change the phase created to Existing and the phase demolished to New Construction. Once again, we get the error stating that the elements need to be disconnected. So I'll click Disconnect. These elements are now demolished in this view. And so, as you can see, the combination of the phase created and phase demolished parameters will create the 4 phase status conditions. Next, I'll change the phase of the view to Existing. In the Existing phase, the elements that were existing in New Construction are now new in the Existing phase, and the elements that are demolished are also new in the Existing phase. Because once again, it's dependent on the phase and then phase created and phase demolished parameters. The problem we have with MEP elements is that they will not remain connected in a previous phase. So even if now that I'm in the Existing phase, the elements that were demolished are no longer connected. And so you have to be aware of that when dealing with MEP elements. I'll change the phase back to New Construction, and then we'll take a look at the phase filter. Right now, the phase filter is set to Show All, meaning all phase statuses will show. If I change it to Show Complete, the temporary and demolished elements no longer appear, and the new elements appear, the existing elements appear just like the new elements. I'll change it back to Show All, and then we'll open the phasing dialog again. On the Phase Filters tab, you can set one of 3 options for each phase status. You can set it to by category, and the normal view settings will be used. You can set it to overridden, and then the controls on the Graphic Overrides tab will be used, or you can choose for that phase status to not display. So when we take a look at the Show Complete phase filter, you can see that new and existing elements display by category, and then demolished and temporary elements are not displayed. I'll click OK to close this dialog, and then we'll cover one more thing. I will enable Select Links and select Pinned Elements, and then select the linked model. I'll click Edit Type to open the Type Properties dialog, and you can see that one of the parameters is Phase Mapping. When I click Edit, it opens a dialog where you can map phases in the host model to phases in the linked model. So if you are working with an architect that has a larger project and you are just doing one portion of that, maybe a build out, they may have several phases in their project and you only need existing and new construction. This is where you can map the phases in the host model to the phases in the linked model so that they all match up appropriately and you are showing the correct conditions in their model that match the phase of your scope of your project. In this video, we will cover selecting the appropriate tag to place, tagging elements, and adjusting tag properties. In the ground floor electrical plan view, several components have been placed. We can now tag these components. On the Annotate ribbon, in the Tag panel, there are several tag tools that can be used on the MEP side. Tag by category will tag individual components, whereas Tag All will tag multiple components, either all the components of a specific category or all the components that are selected. There are also tools to place room tags and space tags. Let's start with Tag by Category. When you activate this tool, there are several options on the options bar. To begin, click Tags. This opens the Loaded Tags and Symbols dialog. Here, you can see the tags that will be used for the various categories of elements. For example, for electrical equipment, the panel name tag will be used, and for electrical fixtures, the electrical device circuit tag will be used. If there are multiple loaded tags, you can click in the field and expand the drop-down and select the appropriate tag. If the tag you want to use is not available, you can click Load Family and then load the tag into the project. I'll click OK for now. Next, in the options bar, you can choose whether or not to include a leader. I'll deselect this option, and then I'll move the cursor over components in the model. As I move over various components, you can see different tags populate in the model. And if I click, a tag is placed. If I want to include a leader, I can select Leader in the options bar. I can then choose whether the leader has an attached end or a free end. With attached end selected, you can simply click and a tag will be placed with a leader. With free end selected, you can click to place the end of the leader, and then you can click again to place the elbow location, and then click again to place the tag. I'll click Modify to end the command. With the tag still selected, I can adjust the end of the leader or the elbow with the dot controls. Since this tag was placed with the free end, there's a dot control at the end, and you can use it to place the tag leader location wherever you want. The tag that was placed with an attached end does not have a dot control at the end. It remains attached to the component depending on where the tag is located. You can still adjust the elbow location and the tag location. And if needed, you can change the leader options in the options bar. You can remove the leader altogether, or you can change it to a free end. Additionally, when you click Edit Type, you can choose a leader arrowhead, as well as specify any other type properties that have been created for the family. When you click on the leader arrowhead field, you can expand the drop-down and select an arrowhead. I'll choose one of the arrow options and then click OK. When I do, an arrow has been added to all tags of this type that are using a leader. So you have to be aware when you are enabling or modifying type properties. Next, on the Annotate ribbon in the Tag panel, I'll click Tag All. This opens the Tag All Not Tagged dialog. In this dialog, I can select a category of elements to tag all components of that category. For example, I'll select lighting fixture tags and then click OK. When I do, the tags have been placed on all the lighting fixtures that were not previously tagged. Back in that dialog, be aware that you can change the tag that's used. And so if the appropriate tag was not selected, you could click Undo and then select that. I'll click Cancel, and then I'll zoom in here to the electrical room. I'll use a window and select the electrical panels and transformer along with other components here in the model, and then I'll switch to the Annotate ribbon and click Tag All again. This time, since I have components selected, the option Only Selected Objects in Current View is available. I'll leave that selected, and then I can choose the categories to tag, and only the components that are selected that match those categories will be tagged. For example, I'll select Electrical Equipment tags, and then I'll click OK. And when I do, the panels that I had selected and the transformer that I had selected are tagged. Once again, I can select that tag and move it as needed and adjust any of the tags after they have been placed. I'll select a tag and then click Edit Family in the contextual ribbon. This opens the tag in the Family Editor. It's important to understand which parameters are being tagged. In this case, there is a label, and tags are made up of labels. You can select the label and then click Edit Label, and you can see which parameters are being used in the tag. In this case, the panel name is being used. And if needed, I can add additional parameters from the electrical equipment category. I'll click Cancel to close the dialog, and then I'll deselect the label. Be aware of the Rotate With Component parameter. When this option is selected, then the tag will rotate with the component. So in this case, if the electrical equipment was on a wall that was angled, it would rotate along with it. Since it's deselected, I can choose for this tag to be either horizontal or vertical. When I select the label, you can see additional parameters in the Properties palette. You can choose to wrap between parameters, and so that's if we had multiple parameters added to this label, we could choose to wrap between them, and then you can control the horizontal and vertical alignment, and then you can choose whether or not to keep the label readable. And so what that does is if the tag is rotated beyond 45 degrees, it will flip so that it will maintain readability. And then you can choose whether or not the label is visible, and so that's useful if you have multiple labels in a tag and you want to have multiple tag types. So as you can see, there are multiple ways to create tags and tag components to help customize your documentation. In this video, we will cover placing keynotes and creating note blocks. There are many different workflows for how keynotes and note blocks can be used. We will take a look at how the functionality works in Revit. To begin, on the Annotate ribbon, in the Tag panel, expand the Keynote Split button. You can place element keynotes, material keynotes, and user keynotes. Element keynotes will reference the keynote parameter for the element. Material keynotes will reference the keynote parameter from the material. User keynotes allow you to manually select a keynote from the keynote table when a user keynote is placed. I'll select Keynoting Settings. In the Keynoting Settings dialog, you can select the keynote table. For this example, we'll use one of the default Revit keynote tables. But you can create a keynote table that meets the needs of your project and then select it here in this dialog. You can also control the numbering method. This can be set to by keynote or by sheet. When numbering by sheet, the keynotes will be numbered based on the order that they are created on a sheet. When numbering by keynote, the keynote numbers will simply reference the keynote. I'll click OK to close this dialog and then zoom into the electrical room. I'll select the transformer and then click Edit Type. This transformer has a keynote specified. You can click in the Keynote field and then click the More button to open the Keynotes dialog. Here you can see the keynote that has been selected, and you can select a different keynote as needed. Once again, the keynote tables can be customized to meet the needs of your project, and you can basically enter in whatever information you need, just as long as it follows the correct formatting. I'll click OK to close each dialog and then deselect the transformer. Back on the Annotate ribbon, I'll activate the Element Keynote tool. You can place keynotes very similar to how you place tags. I'll click to place a keynote on the transformer. When I do, you can see that it's referencing the keynote from the keynote type parameter. I'll click Modify to end the command and then deselect the element keynote. Next, I'll activate the User Keynote tool. I'll place a user keynote on a light fixture. When I place the Keynotes dialog opens, and now I can manually select a keynote. When I click OK, the keynote is specified. I'll click Modify to end the command. With the keynote selected, you can see that there are parameters in the Properties palette. You can adjust the leader just like you can adjust a tag. You can also update the key value after it has been placed. I'll deselect the keynote. After you place keynotes, you'll likely want to create a keynote legend. On the View ribbon, in the Create panel, expand Legends and then click Keynote Legend. I'll use the default name and click OK. And then, with key value and keynote text added to the list of scheduled fields, click OK. This creates a keynote legend, and you can see the key value and the keynote text for the two keynotes that we added. You can customize the keynote legend as needed, such as adjusting the filtering, the sorting, grouping, formatting, and appearance. I'll switch back to the ground floor electrical plan, and then next to the transformer you can see a generic annotation. I've also placed a couple generic annotations next to a couple light fixtures. You can place generic annotations and then create a note block that references the generic annotations. On the View ribbon, in the Create panel, expand Schedules and then click Note Block. In the new Note Block dialog, you can select the generic annotation family that you want to create a note block for. In this case, my generic annotation is called Generic Annotation. I'll click OK. In the Note Block Properties dialog, I'll add the label and the note parameter and then click OK. When I do, you can see the label and note values that have been added to the generic annotation. As you can see, this is very similar to how the keynote legend was. While keynotes and note blocks can have similar functionalities, there can be different use cases for each one. In this case, I'll click Edit next to Sorting Grouping and deselect Itemize Every Instance, and then sort by the label, and click OK. So as you can see, you can use keynotes and generic annotations with note blocks to create customized notes for your project.